Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. We're seeing the horrific pictures from Afghanistan over the last few days as US and other countries race against time to evacuate their citizens and Afghan civilians who work with these foreign governments as translators and in charity organizations and more out of the country following the Taliban takeover on August 15th. Apparently, it is total chaos at the airport. Hundreds of thousands of people are trying to leave at the same time, remembering what Taliban rule was like between 1996 and 2001. Despite its promises during a press conference of providing safety for Afghans, women being allowed to work, and people being allowed to go about their normal businesses, the reverse has been the case in Afghanistan. There have been reports of women being beaten in public for not covering themselves, people heading for the airport being beaten, some being extorted, and total chaos at the airport as well, with tales of people being crushed in stampedes trying to make it to the military aircrafts, evacuating thousands. US President Joe Biden faces the hardest task of defending withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan suddenly, without apparently any formal warning to the Afghan forces who've fallen like a pack of cards before Taliban fighters as they entered district centers, provincial capitals, and then the seat of power in Kabul. The President Ashraf Ghani is in Dubai on humanitarian grounds, so the Emirati government says, leaving other members of government to face the dreaded Taliban who intend to form a governing council any moment now. Discussing the current crisis in Afghanistan with me on the program today are former Permanent Secretary at the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi, and Foreign Affairs commentator Collins Weke. But first, a quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles. Nigeria has extolled its relations with South Korea and intends to expand those relations. This was the outcome of a visit by South Korea's Vice Minister to Nigeria and Africa, Mr. Choi Jong-kyun, a first of its kind for South Korea. Nigeria's Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Zubairu Dada, who received Mr. Choi, said both countries share many things in common and that Nigeria attaches great importance to the political, economic, defense, education and other spheres of her bilateral relations with the Republic of Korea. He expressed further that the two countries would be meeting again in the sixth session of the Nigeria-South Korea Joint Commission in Seoul. Mr. Choi expressed his satisfaction with the reception that greeted him and hoped that the visit will pave ways for more collaborations in readiness to the post-COVID-19 era. Leader of Afghanistan's last major outpost of anti-Taliban resistance, Ahmad Massoud, says he hopes to hold peaceful talks with the Islamist movement that seized power in Kabul a week ago, but that his forces are ready to fight. Finally, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair has joined in criticising the way US forces withdrew from Afghanistan, which resulted in the ensuing quick takeover of the Taliban, calling it a serious mistake.
I support a lot of what President Biden has done since becoming president. I mean, I have a great respect and admiration for him as a person, and I understand he inherited this agreement of February 2020, which was very difficult. And I also understand if you're a political leader, you're under political pressure, people want the engagement to end. But we've got to realize we were in a situation where our engagement was dramatically different from where it was 10 years ago, never mind 20 years ago, and where we could have managed the situation.
The past week has been heartbreaking. We've seen gut-wrenching images of panicked people acting out of sheer desperation. You know, it's completely understandable. They're frightened, they're sad, uncertain what happens next. I don't think any one of us can see these pictures and not feel that pain on a human level.
U.S. President Joe Biden recalling pictures of hundreds of thousands of Afghans and foreigners trying to leave Afghanistan after the Taliban takeover on Sunday, August the 15th.
Of America's finest fighting men and women at the Kabul airport.
He has rejected criticism of his handling of the chaotic U.S. pullout from the country, warning that the operation to evacuate thousands through Kabul airport carries risks and promised Americans there that they will be taken home.
But let me be clear. Any American who wants to come home, we will get you home. But make no mistake, this evacuation mission is dangerous. It involves risks to our armed forces, and it's being conducted under difficult circumstances. I cannot promise what the final outcome will be, or what it will be, that it will be without risk of loss.
The United States is desperately trying to evacuate thousands of people from Afghanistan by an August 31st deadline, although the president says troops at the Kabul airport providing security for the evacuation could stay longer if necessary. Amongst the thousands trying to flee are diplomats and embassy staff, despite assurances from the Taliban that they are under no danger and will be protected better than in the past. Spokesman for the Taliban political officer in Qatar, Suhail Shaheen, said in an exclusive interview with China Global Television Network, the Taliban has taken over daily administrative affairs in the country. Despite some concerns amid the ongoing uncertainty, he stressed that there will be no threat to foreign staff.
Environment for all embassies, all diplomats.
America's allies tried to make sense of what has happened in the last week. On Saturday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel conceded that the Afghan army's resistance against Taliban militants had been misjudged. She said the focus now was on rescuing people from the country, but that there would need to be a discussion on what had or had not been achieved.
Aber vor allen Dingen auch diejenigen, die uns geholfen haben.
EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says Europe must help Afghans.
We need to help. It is our moral responsibility. And not only to help the Afghans arriving here in Spain, but also those who have remained in Afghanistan. And here I want to emphasize that the European Union is firmly committed to continue supporting the NGOs operating in the country. Humanitarian needs are increasing with the latest development.
Von der Leyen pointed out that the European Union has not recognized the Taliban, nor is it holding political talks with the militants. And while the US and other governments brainstorm ways to ensure a smooth evacuation, images of chaos at the Kabul airport will continue to haunt them over the next few weeks.
Welcome back. Joining me now is Ambassador Joe Keshi, a former permanent secretary at the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and a former consul general to the United States with over 35 years of experience in diplomatic service. He joins us from Abuja, Nigeria's capital city. And then we have Collins Wike, a foreign affairs commentator and a politician in Belgium who once stood as candidate for the European Parliament in the 2014 elections. He joins me from Brussels. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me on the program.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Amarachi.
Thank you for having us, and nice to see you, colleagues.
A pleasure, Ambassador Keshi. It's been a while.
Well, I'm glad, all the pleasantries are done with. But let's begin with the fact, gentlemen, that no Nigerian has been identified since the Taliban takeover on August 15th and indicated interest in returning home to Nigeria. Now, I know Nigeria does not have any diplomatic presence in Afghanistan, but we do have a high commission in Pakistan, and even NITCOM says there have been no requests from Nigerians who may be in the country so far. What are your thoughts? Ambassador Keshi, let's begin with you.
Well, on a lighter note, I'll be surprised if there's no Nigerian in Afghanistan, It is said that Nigerians are, almost everywhere around the world. But frankly, from the images we have seen on television, I'm not sure I've actually even seen a black person involved, that looks like an African trying to get off of Afghanistan. So it's very possible that there are no Nigerians there, but if there are Nigerians there, I'm sure that they probably have made their way out or will definitely find a way, or they do not feel threatened enough to want to ask for evacuation.
Yeah, I align with the point made by Ambassador Keshi about, the presence of Nigerians everywhere, and that must include Afghanistan. But I think it's also pretty curious that, there has not been any request from Nigerians to be evacuated from Afghanistan. Now, one of the reasons, of course, is what Ambassador Keshi has said, which is that they may not feel threatened. They probably feel comfortable. But that raises in itself a very, very curious question as to how a Nigerian in a troubled zone as Afghanistan at this moment does not feel threatened. So could it be that the crop of Nigerians there are ones that are allied with with the Taliban, and what exactly is their mission? What gives them that impetus to be comfortable and do not want to flee Afghanistan at this time? So I think it's something that needs to be dug deeper into. Yes, there is no diplomatic representation in Afghanistan, but the neighboring, in Afghanistan, yes, but the neighboring Pakistan has a Nigeria High Commission. I believe there should be a military attaché there and intelligence officers who should, look into the activities of possible Nigerians there, what they are doing there, and we might find this a bit funny. But the fact is that the last thing Nigeria wants to have is an importation or exportation of Taliban style of extremism into Nigeria. So the question could be the Nigerians that are there and feeling comfortable and are not in a hurry to come back home. What is their mission, and how can we be sure that they are not intent on exporting extremism to Nigeria, and that is the mission that they are wishing to accomplish there.
Well, that probably brings me to asking about what President Muhammadu Buhari said shortly after the events of August 15th. He says Africa could become the new frontier of terrorism. I think that speaks to what you're saying, Mr. Collins, about how sure we are that these ones are not going to be the exporters of terrorism back home. So has America created a problem for the world, a problem bigger than the world can solve?
The fact is that if there is one lesson to be learned from, America's involvement, 20-year involvement, and their sudden pullout, it is the fact that Africa has got to, start thinking for itself and start acting for itself, with less dependency on other people to protect the continent. So this is the time, and I think there are sufficient instruments for Africa to begin to, deploy to see that, their own security, their own defense actually are in their hands. That is not to say that Africa is an island and, where they need help and partnership and collaboration from, the international community and other bodies, that cannot happen. Sure, but the responsibility is theirs, and the buck stops on their desk.
Ambassador Keshi, all fingers are pointed at the United States right now. President Biden has been trying, to take the blame for all of this, taking responsibility for the withdrawal of troops, taking responsibility also for the chaos it has caused in Afghanistan and for other countries. It's created a crisis, putting pressure on allies to also begin evacuating embassy staff, translators, Afghan support staff. But he's the only one, apparently, in the line of fire. Is it fair to put all the blame on him?
Absolutely, it's not, but he's the man on the saddle right now, and he bears the bulk of the responsibility for mismanaging the withdrawal from Afghanistan. But here is what I'll say. There are enough people who should be blamed for this disaster, beginning from from President George Bush and his two secretaries of state, and his Secretary of Defense. Unfortunately, he's late today, Rumsfeld, and of course, the Vice President, Chemney. These were, they had, what do they call them at that time? The hotheads who were not prepared to listen to reason. And as a result, they did not do enough strategic thinking before they went to Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a very, geographically speaking, it's a very, tough terrain. The British were there, they left, the Russians had an experience. I can't even remember whether the French were not there. Everyone has suffered similar defeat. But these gentlemen, look, the Bush administration, the Taliban offered the Bush administration a deal to send Osama bin Laden to a third country where they can negotiate and get him if they want to. But the Americans refused and chose to invade not just Afghanistan, but Iraq, that has little or nothing to do with 9/11. And the consequences is what we are now seeing. The unfortunate thing about what Donald Trump did was that it encouraged the Taliban to stop negotiating seriously and just decided to wait to take over the country anytime the Americans were ready to, to leave. So you see that from 20 years ago, there have been blames, and there are so many people that could be blamed, including the U.S. military, of course, and finally, of course, the Taliban, the Afghanistan military. It's still a surprise to everybody how a military that has been trained, that has been provided so much arsenal, could just refuse to fight for whatever reason. History will teach us that in a number of countries that you find Nigerians, particularly even if they are troubled countries like Afghanistan and elsewhere, Nigerians don't get involved in their local politics. They just go there, they trade, they just want to exist, they want to make money and survive. And so I do not see a possibility of, Nigerians don't have to go as far as to Afghanistan to, to import some radicalism into this country. There are enough places around us and so close to us here that they can do that.
So then, what role then do the Afghans play, in the Taliban takeover? That's my next question to you, Ambassador Keshi. And Collins, you can join in after he's done.
Well, look, the simple role they played was that the government at that time simply refused to be responsible to the people of Afghanistan. The leadership failed. The military failed, and as consequently, there was practically nobody to provide the leadership or to inspire the people to fight for their freedom. And today you see quite a number of, Afghanistans demonstrating, journalists complaining, and women, of course, so scared about the consequences of the Taliban's coming in and taking over for the second time. So the overall consequences is that the government, the military, simply failed the people of Afghanistan. It's as simple as that.
Yes, absolutely. There's enough blame to go around, of course, but two things are quite obvious. Number one, the buck stops on the desk of the Afghan leaders, good or bad. It is their responsibility. The Afghan people they are accountable to the Afghan people, and in this particular instance, they fail. Now, let's look at some very, very critical figures here. The police is populated by 150,000 people, officers, and then the National Defense Force, that is the military, is populated by a further 180 million. So we're looking at well over 300,000, joint forces. Now, yes, of course, morale became very, very low, despite all the investments made. And I think if there is anything to take out of all of this, it is the fact that we need to understand that military force without negotiation, without diplomatic solution, actually ends us where we are. Obviously, there had been missed opportunities, for negotiations to take place. And I'm not saying stick with only negotiation and put away the the weapons. No, go in with a gun on the left hand and then with the olive branch on the other hand. And then it is up to your negotiating partners to choose which one they find much more comfortable. That opportunity obviously had been missed, compounded by the fact that 2 years ago, Donald Trump actually boxed America in, and has been very proud of himself in the last weeks, boasting of how he did that and how Biden can't get out of the box that he has put America in. Now, Biden could be blamed, but the point is that the withdrawal was ill-prepared. But the fact still remains that at some point, the withdrawal has got to take place. Now, the question is, what point does it become, right to do so? Nobody knows. And so, in the end, I think the world just has to concentrate on, how best to clean up the mess that has been created.
I think one of the motivating factors for Biden is that more than anybody else in the US administration, past and present, Biden has been in the forefront of championing that America should leave Afghanistan. As vice president, he made a very strong case to his boss that he needed to leave that country as quickly as possible. And yes, true, the agreement tied his hand, but he should have reviewed it in order to ensure that some plans were on the ground. He's taking all these blames now. And to be candid, when I listen to some of the comments on American networks, I think that they are just going too far. I agree with the president. Haven't seen something similar in a country like Sierra Leone, not as large or not on this large scale. Anytime a military is going to withdraw like this, it will always be messy one way or the other. And that is the honest truth. Yeah. The folks in America are just pretending that they do not know. They left Vietnam in a messy situation. Yeah. And there's no time. You can't stay in a place for 20 years with so many 60,000 of your own people and the number of people that you have capacitated, and think that there'll be no crisis when you are leaving. Certainly there'll be crisis. It's just how to manage this crisis moving forward that the Americans and the president has to continue to contend with.
Well, gentlemen, I want us to very quickly answer the last question, and that has to do with immigration. America already has a problem. You have hundreds of thousands of people at the Mexican border. Europe also is dealing with its own immigration crisis, which came full bloom in 2015. Now, with the evacuation of Afghans into European countries and also to the United States, do you foresee a greater problem with immigration?
Now, you could, approach it with a mindset of, good, this is an investment in, in human rights. This is an investment even in the future of the host country, because we are talking of individuals who will eventually become productive. So whatever resources you put into resettling them in the new environment can be looked at as an investment. And there are evidence of some of these investments actually beginning to yield results. Some have, continued to become scientists, medical doctors, and all sorts of professions. So yes, it will be there, but it is now up to the politicians to see how they make their cases and manage the flow as they come in.
Let me quickly add to what Collins has said. Collins is an expert on migration, but here's my take. The difference between the migrants hanging around the Mexican border with the United States and this is that the Mexican and the rest of the people wanting to get into the United States from Latin America are more or less being driven by the underdevelopment and poverty in those countries. On the other hand, the Afghanistans that have been brought into the United States have an obligation to bring them in because these people worked for America for the last 20 years. It's an obligation that they owe. Americans The Americans did the same thing in Vietnam, and they're obligated to do the same, for the Afghanistan that worked for them over these years.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Ambassador Keshi, Collins Weke, you have been wonderful. A pleasure having both of you on the program today. Thanks again. And that's the program today. Thanks again for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.